Chapter 1. Tsunayoshi Sawada. At the Sawada household's front entrance on a Saturday morning, a boy was crouched down, tying his shoelaces. Once he finished, he straightened up from the floor. Click, the door opened, and a stream of sunlight spilled over his face. The brightness made him squint and instinctively shut his eyes for a moment before blinking them open again. The sun's already this strong in the morning. The moment the door opened, the sound of cicadas outside became sharper, louder, filling the air. Summer always gets noisy like this, he grumbled, shaking his head as he picked up the backpack waiting by the door. The bag was almost half his height, stuffed to the brim and solid black. You couldn't even tell what was inside, but he hoisted it effortlessly, like it weighed nothing at all. After adjusting the straps, he grabbed a metal toolbox and a fishing rod beside it. Tsuna. Just as he was about to step out, a woman's voice called from inside. He turned his head. A woman in casual home clothes stood there, her face framed by a warm, radiant smile that could melt away anyone's irritation. Tsuna, how long are you planning to camp this time? About 3 days. Did you pack enough food? Of course. Besides the wild fish I plan to catch, I brought plenty of ingredients, enough for 3 days at least. He patted his backpack proudly. Everything he needed for camping was already prepared. Don't worry, Mom, I know that place like the back of my hand. If I run out of food, I'll just come back early. Seeing her son so confident and ready, Nana Sawada's worry faded. She walked over and ruffled his hair. All right, just make sure to stay safe. I know. Tsuna's face flushed with mild embarrassment. Even at 13, being patted on the head wasn't exactly his favorite thing. No guy that age liked being treated like a little kid, especially by his mom. Then I'm off. With that, he picked up his fishing rod and box, and stepped out the door. This kid. Nana smiled at her son's shy retreating back, shaking her head as she closed the door and went back to her chores. Beneath the blazing summer sun, Tsuna walked down the path toward the back mountain campsite, his mood bright and light. Today wasn't special just because he was going camping. It was special because it marked the final day of his 6-year effort, his long journey to finally harvest the fruit of perseverance. His name was Tsunayoshi Sawada. From the moment he was born, he had memories, awareness, and knowledge from his previous life. He remembered everything clearly, 33 years of life, ending in a stupid, anticlimactic death when a gas leak filled his apartment. But death hadn't been the end. He'd opened his eyes again, reborn into a world he knew all too well from his last life. Katekyo Hitman Reborn. Yeah, the instant he heard his new name, Tsunayoshi Sawada, he'd realized exactly where he was, and what kind of chaotic, twisted future might await him. Unfortunately, as an ordinary human and a newborn baby, there was nothing he could do to change fate. But luck hadn't abandoned him. On his 7th birthday, strange glowing words began to appear before his eyes. Eat properly, exercise after meals, go to bed early. Each phrase acted like a daily goal. When he completed one, it turned green. After finishing all 3, a small red number appeared above them, tracking how many days he'd succeeded. Tsuna figured this must be his cheat, his unique reborn ability. So, he followed the instructions. Honestly, they weren't anything unusual. Eat well, get some exercise, sleep early, pretty basic stuff. The only new habit he really had to build was that, exercise after meals, part. Still, having visible goals motivated him more than he expected. Every time he completed the 3 tasks, he could feel it, his strength and stamina growing bit by bit. Not by much each day, but after 2,160 days of steady effort. It added up. At first, Tsuna used to complain a lot. The progress felt painfully slow, nothing like those fantasy protagonists who turned their lives around overnight. But as the years went on, he let go of that frustration. Even a small gain was still a gain. Better than nothing, right? That mindset kept him going. He stopped worrying about how strong his cheat was and just focused on living like a normal kid, doing his 3 daily goals without fail. Eat well, exercise, sleep early. No matter what the future threw at him, the strength and stamina he earned every day were real. That was enough. Then, just yesterday, after finishing all 3 goals as usual, the numbers turned green, and a new red outlined gift box appeared beneath them, with a small counter beside it. 2,190 2,191sts. That's when Tsuna realized it. The past 6 years had all been build-up. All this time, he'd been working toward unlocking that mysterious reward. And now, he was only 1 day away. What could it be? Excitement flickered across his face. Since morning, he'd been wondering what might come out of that box. Carrying his backpack, toolbox, and fishing rod, Tsuna made his way up Namimori Mountain. The mountain was vast, covered in thick greenery, teeming with hidden wildlife. According to local legends, even bears live deep in its heart. No one had ever proven it true, or maybe those who tried became bear food. Either way, no one was eager to find out. Tsuna wasn't stupid. Sure, after 6 years of effort, his body was stronger than most kids his age, but he was still a 13-year-old middle schooler. Teenager, or not, he was no match for a full-grown bear. At best, he'd be a slightly tougher snack. That's why he'd picked his campsite carefully, far from the deep woods, far from the river, and high enough to stay clear of any wild animals. Safety first, after all. Chapter 2, Camping at Namimori Mountain. Clatter. Loose gravel tumbled down the cliffside, falling nearly 30 meters before splashing into the narrow stream below. Phew, still as dangerous as ever. Pressed flat against the near vertical rock face, Tsuna clung to the mountain with a bulky backpack strapped tightly to his back. His feet braced against jutting stones, and his fingers hooked securely into cracks in the rock. Even in this death-defying position, Tsuna lifted his gaze upward, quickly locking onto his next handhold. His fingers dug in with an inhuman grip, his legs springing as he leapt higher, moving with the agility of a mountain goat, or maybe a monkey. His climb was fast, fluid, efficient. In less than 3 minutes, his hands gripped the top ledge. With a solid pull, he swung his body and pack up onto the cliff. Tsuna stood, breathing lightly, and glanced down the way he'd come. Every time I look down from here, I can't help but admire my own stupidity. Who in their right mind decides to free climb this just to test something? He let out a short laugh at himself. Each time he reached the top, the same thought always came back, equal parts awe and disbelief. And all this just because I wanted to see if I could awaken my dying will flame. A helpless sigh escaped him. No matter what he tried, it never worked. He'd pushed himself to the brink before, fear, pain, even that desperate will to live, and still, nothing. His dying will flame stayed silent, stubborn, like it was mocking him. Whatever. He shook his head, brushing away the disappointment. 6 years had passed. If the dying will flame were ever going to awaken on its own, it would have happened already. Maybe he was doing it wrong. Or maybe he needed a dying will bullet to trigger it, like in the anime. Tsuna set his backpack down and tugged on the line still connected below, hauling up his fishing rod and toolbox one by one. Once everything was up, he unzipped the pack and began pulling out his gear, collapsible poles, folded fabric, and a rolled-up tent. He assembled the poles and slotted them through the fabric's loops, forming the tent's frame until it stood firm, like skin stretched over bone. The outside looked good, now the inside needed padding. Without a soft, waterproof mat, there was no way he'd get any sleep. He spread out the mat, unrolled his sleeping bag, and sprayed the interior with bug repellent. Shelter. Secured. As for the stove, that was easy. He built a small fire pit from river stones, arranged in a circle with a hollow center. Then he opened his toolbox, pulled out a metal grill, and set it on top. For the next few days, grilled food would be more than enough. No need to fish today. With this heat, I'd better finish the fresh stuff before it spoils. From the bottom of the box, he pulled out a pack of beef sealed in a cooler bag and a small sack of charcoal. He stacked the charcoal under the grill, splashed on a bit of alcohol, and lit it. The flames caught quickly, growing hotter until the coals glowed red. When the fire was steady, Tsuna laid slices of beef across the grill. He brushed on oil, watching as the meat sizzled, fat popping and juices dripping into the coals below. A sprinkle of chili powder, a dash of salt, and soon, the air was filled with the mouthwatering scent of searing meat. Nothing beats good beef. Compared to vegetables, Tsuna had always been a meat lover. He flipped the slices, cooking more, picking up the finished ones with chopsticks. He blew on them a few times before popping one into his mouth. Thin cuts meant they cooked fast, and with just the right blend of spice and salt, the flavor hit perfectly, smoky, juicy, with just enough heat to make his appetite surge. Ever since his body had grown stronger, his energy needs skyrocketed. His appetite had followed. By the end of lunch, he'd eaten half the beef. Guess the rest's for dinner. He wiped the grease from his lips, patting his full stomach with satisfaction. He tucked the remaining meat back into the cooler bag, where chunks of ice kept it fresh for the evening. Yeah, dinner was going to be good too. Summer, huh? After eating, Tsuna lay down inside the tent. Out here, far from the city, he could clearly hear the chirping of insects and rustling of leaves. The afternoon warmth and the hum of nature were enough to lull anyone to sleep. The story starts in my second year of middle school, about a year from now. He exhaled, half dreading, half anticipating the future. Man, I really wonder if I'll be ready for that kind of life. Having a strict, responsible teacher wasn't the problem, it was the type of teacher he'd get. One who didn't hold back, who came down hard the moment you slacked off. A year from now, life definitely wouldn't be peaceful. Not that it ever could be again. The life ahead of him, if it followed the original story, would be anything but calm. Tsuna couldn't help but worry a little. Back when he'd first realized he'd been reborn into this world, he'd been full of energy and excitement, dreaming of the wild adventures to come. But now, after years of living quietly, eating well, studying, growing up with his gentle mother, those fiery ambitions had dulled. Still, there was one thing he hadn't stopped longing for: power. That same yearning burned in him even now, the hope that someday, he could ignite his own dying will flame. To soar through the sky, unbound by the limits of ordinary humans. Even while basking in the peace of summer, that desire still stirred deep inside him. His gaze drifted to the invisible interface of his cheat, and a grin tugged at his lips. His eyes curved with excitement. Tomorrow, can't wait. Chapter 3, Annihilation Maker. The next morning, sunlight pierced through the tent's fabric, hitting Tsuna square in the face. His eyes snapped open instantly. It's here. The moment he looked at his invisible interface, he saw it. The gift box that had been outlined in red was now glowing green. He reached out and tapped it. In an instant, the once flat, 2D box solidified in midair. Slowly, it began to open. Whoosh! A blinding light burst out, forcing Tsuna to shut his eyes. When the glare finally faded, he cautiously opened them again, and froze when he saw the text hovering above the opened box. Annihilation Maker. For a second, his thoughts just stopped. Wait, that's from the DXD. Annihilation Maker, the top-tier sacred gear. Of course he knew it. He'd watched High School DXD, every season, without skipping a single episode. Sure, it was colorful as hell, but it wasn't just fanservice. The battles, the passion, straight fire. And Issei Hyodo, that man didn't build his harem the easy way. He earned it, literally fighting for his life every damn time. So yeah, Tsuna definitely knew the name Annihilation Maker. Unlike most sacred gears, it didn't need special weapons or rituals. With nothing but imagination, its user could create powerful beasts, creatures as strong and versatile as the limits of their mind. Basically, the ultimate cheat code. I just wanted to awaken my dying will flame, and you hand me this. A wide grin spread across Tsuna's face. He couldn't stop it if he tried. With this, I can make any kind of creature I want. Custom built for any situation. An idea sparked in his mind, a familiar one. The Sky Lion, Natsu. The image took form in his head, growing clearer with every passing second. And then, right before him, space itself rippled. A mass of light and matter began to swirl, twisting together until it solidified into a small, golden lion cub. Row. A soft, cub-like cry echoed through the tent. The tiny lion had a mane of orange-red flame burning around its neck, flickering and alive. For a brief moment, Tsuna just stared, stunned. Then his face broke into pure joy as he scooped the creature up into his arms. No way, it actually worked. He hadn't awakened his dying will flame. He didn't have a box weapon or the rings to open one. Which meant the Sky Lion before him could only have come from one source, Annihilation Maker. Row. The little lion didn't resist, but its glassy eyes told a different story, blank, unfocused. Like a doll brought to life without a soul. It doesn't have intelligence, not like a real box weapon. So what about its abilities? As if in response to his words, the cub turned toward one side of the tent and opened its mouth. Grr. Roar. A burst of orange flame shot out, just brushing the tent's fabric, yet in an instant, the material turned gray, charred like concrete. Tsuna's eyes widened. It can use dying will flames. Maybe it's because I didn't imagine it having intelligence, so it didn't gain that trait. Annihilation Maker worked purely off imagination. Whatever the user pictured, that was what took shape. If something was missing, like personality, instincts, or special powers, it was because the creator hadn't imagined it in. Then what if I add those details now? He refocused, picturing the sky lion in more detail, its instincts, its emotions, its awareness, everything that made a living creature feel alive. But the cub in his arms didn't change. Its dull eyes stayed blank, its tiny body still limp and quiet. So once it's made, I can't edit it afterward. Tsuna studied the little lion closely, confirming that his mental tweaks hadn't affected it at all. That probably meant creations couldn't be altered post-summon, he'd have to make a new one entirely. Or maybe, it's not that I can't, I just can't yet. Either way, it was something he'd need to test later, once he understood the sacred gear better. He looked down at the cub again. Now that he'd calmed, he could faintly feel something, a subtle thread connecting the two of them, a sense of control. Disappear. The thought alone was enough. The small lion dissolved into ash and faded back into nothingness. Total control over my creations, figures. He wasn't surprised. Anything born from Annihilation makers should obey its creator absolutely, and vanish at their command. In some ways, maybe it was better that they didn't have minds of their own. But Tsuna couldn't shake the feeling that intelligence would make them far more useful, companions instead of tools. And if they could be recreated from his memory and imagination, then even death wouldn't mean true destruction. Still, that was a question for another day. Right now, he had testing to do. After all, in Annihilation Maker, the key word wasn't monster. It was creation. The monster was just the vessel, an outlet for imagination, a body to carry whatever powers or concepts the user wanted to give it. Even with only a brief test, Tsuna could already tell. The true power of this sacred gear lay in what the creations could do. Their abilities were limited only by his imagination. With enough creativity, he could theoretically create any ability, any concept, embodied in any form. That was what made Annihilation Maker so terrifying. It didn't just summon monsters, it gave form to thoughts. A power that turned imagination into reality. A literal, living version of what you wish for becomes real. Annihilation Maker was the cheat beneath all cheats. Chapter 4. Voluntary Crossing. Imagination turned into real power, but that also means of become its biggest weakness. Annihilation Maker, a downgraded version of wish made reality. A power with near limitless potential. And naturally, the greatest weakness of that power was the one doing the imagining. Tsuna was well aware of that. To gain an ability that could rival the multiverse itself, only to realize he was its Achilles heel, yeah, that left him with some complicated feelings. But Tsuna didn't dwell on it for long. Guess I just need to train my body alongside Annihilation Maker. Even if I overdo it, I can just make a creature to heal me. Perfect. Invincible. The boy could feel how much this sacred gear was helping him. No need for manpower, no elaborate equipment, just imagination. As long as he could picture it, he could gradually make himself stronger. Then, an idea flashed through his mind. Wait, even if I'm not that strong yet, what if I make Annihilation Maker do the heavy lifting? After all, the ability didn't just let him summon autonomous beasts. He could technically create something like armor, a creature that functioned as one. There were plenty of precedents for that. Like in live-action hero shows. Or even the famous boosted gear in Divine Dividing from High School DxD. If those could be considered demon beasts, then with the right imagination, he should be able to recreate them perfectly. Quote, exclamation mark question mark quote. A strange sensation prickled across his left hand. Tsuna looked down to see a slime-like substance wrapping around it, shifting and hardening as it changed form. A crimson gauntlet with a metallic sheen emerged, piece by piece. A green jewel formed on the back of his hand, glowing faintly, while golden spikes jutted out near his elbow. So, the ability, boost. His body surged with strength, his power doubled in an instant. The amplification was so raw and direct that Tsuna could feel it in every muscle fiber. 10 seconds later, the voice echoed again. Boost. The emerald jewel pulsed with light, and the doubled power compounded again, reinforcing his entire body. Tsuna's eyes widened. He knew this feeling, no doubt about it, this was the boosted gear's power. So my guess was right. Annihilation Maker can even recreate the abilities of other sacred gears, as long as my imagination is strong enough. But he quickly shook his head. No, something's off. The Annihilation Maker user in DxD should have thought of this too. That team isn't full of idiots. If they didn't do it, it's not because they didn't want to. It's because they couldn't. That was the real issue, they couldn't. So why could he do it? Tsuna stared at his left hand, still wrapped in the crimson gauntlet. He didn't think he was all that different from anyone else. The only real distinction was his cheat, the mysterious system he'd had after being reborn. But somehow, his results were completely different. There's something unusual about me, whatever it is, I'll deal with it later. It was worth investigating, sure, but right now, he was still just a first-year middle schooler who hadn't even awakened his dying will flame yet. No way he could figure out the deeper secrets behind his own body. First things first, he had to fully understand Annihilation Maker. Then, maybe through that, he could start uncovering the truth about himself. Tsuna looked once more at the gauntlet on his hand. Disappear. The armor and the strengthening effect vanished instantly. So the boost disappears along with the creation itself, huh? I'll have to keep that in mind. The power of Annihilation Maker is insanely convenient. And if I pair it with the secrets I'm hiding, its potential might be even greater. Then, a sudden thought struck him. If my secret can make Annihilation Maker create DXD's sacred gears, then could I use it to make a gateway back to my old world? The idea burst in his mind before he could stop it. I mean, who wouldn't think about that? Traveling between worlds, everyone would be curious. He'd been dragged into this world without control. But now, if he could actively choose to cross over, who wouldn't be tempted? There wasn't anything wrong with the thought itself. But Tsuna had forgotten one important detail, he still hadn't mastered his sacred gear. Quote, exclamation mark question mark quote. A wave of weightlessness hit him hard. His body froze as the world tilted, and suddenly, a swirl of seven-colored light opened beneath him, a spiraling tunnel stretching downward. For an instant, his life flashed before his eyes, his thoughts racing faster than ever. I'm screwed. He knew exactly what had happened. Just like the Sky Lion earlier, Annihilation Maker had once again responded to his imagination, literally creating the gateway back. It had manifested his thought. For real. But, what was he even going back to? 13 years had passed since he'd been reborn. Who knew how much time had flowed over there? And now, he had a new family here. His mom, his life, could he just abandon all that? He'd end up with nothing either way. Guess there's only one thing to do now. The falling sensation didn't stop. Tsuna clenched his teeth, he had to act. Whether this portal led, back, or somewhere else, survival came first. Leave a marker. Coordinate. Fix a coordinate for this world. He stared desperately at the still open rift above him, shouting the command in his mind. A sacred gear always responded to its user's deepest will, and so did his. As the fall sped up, Tsuna felt it, his anchor locked onto the world behind him. Just as he sensed the connection take hold, he was thrown downward with brutal force. Splash. Chapter 5. Falling into the girl's bath. The violent sense of weightlessness left Tsuna almost unable to control his body. Before he could react properly, his eyes caught sight of the far end of the rift, the exit passing through his field of vision. That meant he was about to hit the ground. Maximum impact resistant slime. The fear of death boiled his survival instincts to the surface. He pictured the huge slime used for cushioning impacts, the best pad for a fall. In an instant, a blue slime roughly 4 meters across appeared beneath where Tsuna was going to land. Dwang! The falling kinetic energy was completely absorbed by the massive slime, and for the first time in the fall, Tsuna felt a sliver of hope. The slime, having devoured enormous energy, wrapped him tightly so he wouldn't be flung away by the rebound. It took the slime a while to stabilize. Once it had swallowed all the falling energy, the enormous blob vanished. Tsunayoshi Sawada sat on the floor, face a little pale. He couldn't fly, falling from an unknown height. If not for that stroke of luck, he might have ended up as a smear on the ground. That sort of thing probably shaved years off my life. God only knew how much lifespan he'd gambled to create that cushion at the last second. I don't know about the lifespan part, but I do know you just did something ridiculously risky. The sudden female voice made Tsuna reflexively look up. The moment the girl came into view, it was all white, yes, from head to toe pure white, flawless, perfectly smooth. He stared for 2 seconds, then quickly turned away. Sorry, you fell through the ceiling into my bath and saw my body. Is sorry really all you plan to say? Tsuna knew one apology wouldn't fix this. He'd fallen into someone's bathroom out of nowhere and seen something he definitely shouldn't have. That was basically an open and shut case of invasion of privacy. Even if it wasn't intentional, no judge would buy the "I slipped through a dimensional rift" excuse. That was absurd. Wait, Tsuna looked up again, but the ceiling had no hole now, and that deflated him like a punctured balloon. Then, in the next moment, a faint sensation of his coordinate anchor gave him huge hope. Coordinate. Right, I still have a coordinate. His disappointment instantly turned into excitement. With his eyes closed, Tsuna could sense a coordinate far away. The signal was weak because of the distance, like a phone bar reading somewhere between 0 and 1 on a 5-bar scale, flickering and unstable. It kept shifting between detectable and undetectable. Better than nothing. If I can sense it, there's a way. Although I can guess what you're thinking, maybe you should focus on where you are right now, and on the fact you just acted like a peeping Tom. The woman behind him reminded him kindly. Tsuna's briefly relaxed emotions snapped back. He almost forgot about the immediate problem. A girl in the bath had seen him tumble through the ceiling and had watched him create a slime to soften the fall. While he was trying to figure out how to deal with the situation, footsteps came from behind, bare feet hitting the floor with no effort to muffle the sound. They stopped right behind him. You shouldn't want me to expose you, traveler from another world, right? Tsuna's eye twitched. The line carried the typical Japanese tone. And about you peeping on me just now. Whatever your excuse, you saw me, didn't you? Tsuna couldn't deny it, he had seen. Worse, the image was burned into his mind with unnerving clarity. He didn't even know he had such a good memory, he could still flip the frame of that moment in his head like a snapshot. I did see. So, how do you like my body? Tsuna thought he might have misheard. The girl sounded oddly excited, and then she actually asked what he thought of her body. A normal girl in this situation should have been angry. Why was this one so weird? Against his will, Tsuna replayed the girl's image in his head. A slim figure, perfectly proportioned top to bottom, no visible flab. That could be both good and bad, depending on how you looked at it. With a cute face to match, she was definitely in the adorable category. How should he respond? Your body looks nice, would come off gross, especially to her face. While he was torn, the girl behind him spoke again. Say what you really think. I absolutely won't retaliate afterward. That line practically screamed, I will retaliate afterward. Tsuna couldn't help but scoff inwardly. Even if he hadn't dated in his past life, that didn't mean he'd never used short video apps or read novels. Tsuna took a deep breath. You saying that sounds like you're planning to get revenge afterward. So you noticed. I thought you didn't get it. I'm not stupid enough to fall for that. There's no point arguing with a girl. From a lot of sources, Tsuna had learned women tended to be emotional. Except for moms like his own, most were driven by feeling more than logic, so treating them as emotional beings usually worked. Also, don't trust pretty girls easily. The prettier they are, the more they lie, he'd heard that from someone wise once. Alright, then let's talk about things we can talk about. For example, why you're not just killing me after I threatened you. Chapter 6. Chosen by Loki. Miss, I may not know much, but I'm not an idiot. Just looking at how this bath is set up, I can tell you're no ordinary woman. You've definitely got guards in this house. Yet despite all that noise just now, not a single one of them came rushing in. I seriously doubt they just didn't notice. Still facing away from her, Tsuna glanced toward the bath's doorway. If I'd made any suspicious move, someone would have already come in and taken my head off, wouldn't they? From the very start, Tsuna's pulse had been pounding in his ears, as if warning him not to make the wrong move. He didn't know why his body was giving him that instinctive alert, but he chose to trust it. Oh, your danger sense isn't bad at all. The girl sounded amused. Then she called out toward the door. We're fine now, Finn. Call off the alert. Have everyone back off a bit. Loki, when this is over, you'd better give us a full explanation. A youthful boy's voice came from outside, gentle but tinged with exhaustion, clearly the result of following her whims. Tsuna didn't hear footsteps retreating, but he could feel the tension in his veins easing. At least for now, there didn't seem to be any immediate danger. Just as he let out a quiet breath, and started wondering why she dismissed her guards so quickly, he suddenly felt the girl move closer. Her voice brushed against his ear. Wondering why I called them off so fast. If I attacked you right now, you could easily overpower me, couldn't you? Then why'd it? Her tone was light, fearless. There was even a hint of curiosity, excitement, maybe. That only made Tsuna more confused. What was this girl trying to do? He couldn't help but ask, why? Why? Because your behavior tells me you have a strong moral code. That caught him off guard. If you were dangerous, she continued, you wouldn't have turned around the instant you saw me. You'd have rushed me, taken control of the situation. The fact that you looked away right away, that's instinct, not thought. Your own sense of morality kicking in. Her warm breath grazed the back of his ear, making him shiver a little. But what really got to him was her sharp insight. She was perceptive, a traveler from another world with a sense of ethics, she said softly. Your upbringing built a wall inside you. Even now, when you're surrounded and outmatched, that wall still stops you from crossing certain lines. Tsuna took a deep breath. She was right, he had been raised that way. And that same upbringing was what bound him now. Still, being seen through so easily left him deflated. She really pegged me that fast. So, the girl said cheerfully, can we talk properly now? Tsuna hesitated, glancing around. Here, I think here's fine. Unless, of course, you'd rather talk face to face. Me, face to face? Tsuna's expression twitched. No way. This works just fine. Great, then let's start with introductions. I'll go first. My name's Loki. Loki, so this was a Western world after all. Tsuna thought silently. Tsunayoshi Sawada. Got it. Now that we know each other's names, let's move on. Her voice came closer again, softer this time. So, can you go back? The question made Tsuna pause. Lady Loki, if I could go back, I would have already done it. Oh ho, now that's a lie. How the hell did she? Tsuna almost turned around on reflex. Thinking, how did she know? Hee, your reactions are even better than I expected. Loki's tone was pure mischief, brimming with delight at toying with him. But you did lie, didn't you? She continued. My question was, can you go back? But you emphasized now, which means you can't go back yet. Am I right? Her tone didn't change at all, but it still sent a ripple of tension down Tsuna's spine. She'd read him perfectly. He realized he couldn't win in a battle of wits against her. Every reaction he gave was like an open book. And that ability of hers, to sense lies, it reminded him of the Von Gula bloodline's hyper-intuition. Maybe she had something similar. Not exactly, he said at last. I don't know if I can go back. I just hope I can find a way. That wasn't a lie, so it really was a lie-detecting ability. Tsuna was convinced now. He hadn't lied, he'd spoken the truth as he saw it. And Loki had confirmed it instantly. It was the same kind of power that lets someone feel the truth behind words. So right now, you can't go back. It'll take time to fix whatever's stopping you. But you're stuck in another world, and even if you can survive on your own, stability's another matter. This world has plenty of dangers. Her tone turned sweetly persuasive, too smooth, too practiced. Tsuna didn't even need to look to picture the sly grin on her face. Lady Loki, you already have enough guards, don't you? He asked. Finn and the others, sure, they're strong, but none of them are as interesting as you. She laughed softly. I'm very fond of unique people. And of course, I'd love to see whether you can actually find your way home, or maybe uncover what you're hiding. Then her voice dropped, almost a whisper. Besides, if you leave here now, and anyone troublesome learns how different you are, well, let's just say they'd make me look harmless. Her words were playful, but the warning beneath them was sharp enough to cut. Tsuna's mind raced. He didn't know anything about this world, only that the woman behind him was named Loki, and from the name alone, it sounded like a world modeled after Western mythology. Which meant there were likely plenty of people here with power, and danger, to spare. Leaving Loki's domain could easily get him killed. The throbbing in his veins since his fall seemed to confirm as much. So really, there was only one option left. Tsuna took a long breath. Can I set a few conditions? Chapter 7. The Overridden Familia Crest. Of course you can. With her approval, Tsunayoshi Sawada finally began to think things through. Looks like I've ended up in a Western-style fantasy world, swords, magic, and all. This Loki woman seems to have some kind of lie detection ability. She's probably the head of a clan, or maybe some kind of noble lady. I still need more information about this world before I can draw any solid conclusions. For now, that's all I've got. He didn't have much to go on. Even so, there was something off about Loki. Her behavior was undeniably strange. Compared to the refined grace one might expect from a lady of status, she acted more like a bold trickster who did whatever amused her. Tsuna couldn't imagine any proper noblewoman holding a conversation stark naked while someone else was clearly watching. Still, that wasn't the point right now. He had to deal with his immediate needs. I'll need a few resources. Since things had reached this stage, Tsuna figured he might as well take advantage of the opportunity to grow stronger. Annihilation Maker was an overpowered ability, but he didn't want it to become his biggest weakness. At the very least, he needed the strength to defend himself if things went south. And what else? Loki prompted. I want a degree of independence. Oh, like what? When I find a way back to my own world, I want you to let me leave. If you can really manage that, you wouldn't need my permission anyway. But sure, I'll agree. In exchange, Loki's eyes gleamed with mischief. When that time comes, I want to visit your world. She made her own demand, and after a brief moment of thought, Tsuna nodded. All right, if I ever find the way home, I'll take you there myself, and I'll make sure you get back safely afterward. When that day came, when he could open the door between worlds, it would mean he had the power to choose for himself. Resources and freedom were what he needed most right now. And with that promise in place, Tsuna believed that when he finally gained the ability to return home, he'd also have the strength to face Loki as an equal. No other requests. You're not worried I'll just treat you like a toy or something? Loki teased. Tsuna didn't even flinch. I'm not worried. I can tell you're not the type to bother with something that troublesome. If you wanted to, you could have just called someone in earlier. And if you really saw me that way, you wouldn't have let me make conditions in the first place. Well, aren't you sharp? Loki chuckled again, the sound low and amused. Good. Since we're done negotiating, strip. Strip. Tsuna froze, staring blankly. That was the last thing he expected her to say after agreeing to terms. What are you imagining? A sharp thwack landed on the back of his head. This is for the contract. I need to inscribe it on your back, so take your shirt off. A contract, that definitely fit the whole swords and magic aesthetic. Tsuna rubbed the spot where she'd hit him, it didn't even hurt. Her strength was surprisingly light. Once he understood, he unbuttoned his shirt and pulled it off without protest. Then a hand pressed against his bare back. Oh ho, looks like you've been keeping in shape. Her touch tickled a little, and Tsuna tensed, not used to the sensation. Guess so. I like swimming and climbing, stuff like that. Keeps me in decent shape. No wonder. Solid foundation. Better than I expected, Loki thought, lightly tracing the lines of his back. A real treasure fell into my lap this time. A faint smile curved her lips. Without hesitation, she brought her finger to her mouth and bit down. The skin broke, and bright red blood welled up. She pressed the bleeding fingertip to his back. Shish. The instant her blood touched his skin, a blinding light erupted, flooding the entire bath in brilliance. The flare was so intense that Loki had to shut her eyes against it. When the glow finally faded, she opened them again, and froze. Her familia's crest, the jester insignia, had changed. That was impossible. The familia mark was supposed to be immutable, a divine seal that no mortal could alter. Yet there it was, overwritten before her very eyes. 7 flames of different colors and shapes circled around a single shell-shaped core. One of them, a vivid orange flame, looked like it was truly burning. My crest was replaced. Loki's eyes widened, first with shock, then with pure curiosity. Something like this shouldn't be possible, but that impossibility only made her all the more intrigued by the boy responsible. Her gaze returned to his back. The fauna was still active, it hadn't failed. It was just, no longer hers. She puffed her cheeks in mock annoyance, then shrugged it off. Fine, whatever, let's see what we've got. The basics were normal, name, level, all at the initial stage. The real interest lay in the magic and skills. Magic. No description, no chant, no effect. Completely blank. Skills, however, there were more of. The first one was also another unknown, mirroring the mystery of the magic. Then came the next. Blood of Vongola grants hyper-intuition and Annihilation Maker allows the user to create magical beasts based on imagination. So many unknowns, Loki muttered, her eyes practically sparkling. She'd known from the start that Tsuna had secrets, but she'd assumed her divine blessing would expose them. Instead, the result blew past every expectation. A completely unidentified magic, an incomprehensible skill, only one, Annihilation Maker, was readable at all. Even from its description, Loki could tell the ability wasn't normal. Shouldn't that count as magic instead of a skill? She thought. The power to create creatures through imagination alone was absurd. Even gods would hesitate to grant such an outrageous gift. So that's why he fell here from another world, because of this skill. The cause and effect clicked instantly in her mind. Loki leaned back, eyes drifting toward the ceiling. For the first time in a very long while, she found herself honestly amazed. Sometimes, the difference between people really was impossible to fathom. Chapter 8. Short-term goals and long-term plans. This skill really is absurd. Loki couldn't help recalling the moment Tsunayoshi Sawada had fallen from the sky, a literal crash landing from another world, right before her eyes. To think that ability belonged to one of the beasts created by that skill, it made even a goddess like her feel her worldview shifting. He's got way more secrets than I thought, she murmured, watching the faint glow fade from his back. And the weight behind them's way heavier than I expected. The power in him isn't something granted by Fauna, it existed before he ever received it. The Fauna just turned it into visible data. For an ordinary person, a Fauna was a massive blessing. For someone talented, it made their potential manifest early. But for a person who'd already realized that potential, it simply quantified what was already there. The first two types were common enough. The third, in all her time walking the lower world, Loki had only ever seen one case, Tsunayoshi Sawada. Add to that the fact that he was an otherworlder with who knew how many hidden powers, and it wasn't hard to see why Loki's interest in him was anything but ordinary. She patted his bare back lightly. All done. You can put your clothes back on now. Oh, Tsuna quickly slipped his shirt back on. He had no idea what Loki had just done. All he'd seen was a flash of bright light behind him, but he hadn't felt anything strange, no physical change, no mental shift. It was weird. He'd expected a contract to at least feel binding somehow. Just as that thought crossed his mind, a hand clapped him on the back. Still thinking about whether the contract's gonna restrict you? Yeah, I figured there'd be some kind of limitation. But I can't feel anything at all. Of course you can't. You think I'd let you notice it that easily? Tsuna blinked in surprise. Wait, Miss Loki, you said this was a contract. Aren't contracts supposed to have restrictions? I said it was a contract, and you actually believed me. Yeah, Loki stared at him, then groaned under her breath. She'd been joking, but he'd taken her words at face value. This kid really didn't have much guile, did he? Loki sighed softly. Fine, let me explain properly. What we formed just now is a kind of contract, but more accurately, it's a Fauna. It's the divine blessing gods give to mortals, meant to guide and awaken their hidden potential. Those who receive it stop being ordinary and become members of a familia. So this Fauna, it's basically a guiding force. Exactly. Loki smiled, pleased that he caught on quickly. Fauna helps mortals grow faster. For those who can't awaken their talent on their own, it acts like a divine booster. It also lets ordinary people turn their potential into numbers they can actually see. As long as they keep working hard, they'll grow stronger. And once they see that growth, it pushes them to work even harder. That's what Fauna does. Quantifying one's abilities, now that was a powerful concept. Tsuna could see why it was considered such a gift. Ordinary people could never compare to geniuses in raw talent, but Fauna gave them a way to close the gap. That alone made it an incredible system. He'd never believed the world was fair to begin with. It was obvious, life wasn't equal. Talent, birth, and social status were all unfair advantages. That was the reality of existence. But Fauna could bridge that gap. In its own way, it was a miracle of balance. Still, the word nagged at him. Fauna, why does that sound so familiar? It wasn't from here. He was sure he'd heard it somewhere else before, but no matter how hard he tried, the memory wouldn't surface. Later. I'll think about it later. Tsuna shook his head, pushing the thought aside. Anyway, Loki said, stretching. We'll talk more once we're out of here. I'm meeting with Finn and the others soon, you're coming too. Me, of course. You're the main topic. How am I supposed to explain everything without you there? Besides, you're our familia's new key player. You'll need to show them what you can do if you want those resources you asked for. Tsuna nodded slightly. That part made sense. All right, don't turn around yet. I need to get changed. He heard her footsteps retreat behind him, and only then did his tense shoulders finally relax. Finally gone. He'd been stiff the whole time, kind of hard not to be, considering he'd literally fallen from the sky, seen her naked, and then held a full conversation afterward. Well, that confirms it. Loki definitely isn't a normal woman. That Fauna thing isn't normal either. No ordinary person could bestow something like that. It must be tied to her divine status. And she said I'm key to her familia's future, yeah. No matter the world, you've gotta prove your worth if you want real support. Nothing surprising there. Still, information about this world's limited. I'll have to pay close attention at that meeting with Loki and Finn. He took a deep breath, mentally piecing together the chaotic threads of his situation. Getting home wasn't the priority right now. He knew he wouldn't find a way back anytime soon, it was a long-term goal. What mattered was how to achieve his short-term ones along the way. Learning about this world, understanding his current circumstances, using the resources Loki provided to strengthen himself. That was his small goal, the first step on the road home. And the first thing I need to figure out is the Loki Familia itself. Next chapter. Enjoy this book so far. Sign in to find out more. Sign in later. Danmachi, Tsunayoshi Sawada and the Annihilation Maker Chapter 8 Short-Term Goals and Long-Term Plans, web novel.